Activist Alexei Navalny was awarded today the 2021 Sakharov Prize for freedom of thought. As he's imprisoned, his daughter Daria Navalnaya received the prize on his behalf. But here now we have Leonid Volkov, one of his main political advisors, who will answer some questions to you today. So welcome, Mr. Volkov.
Thank you.
And before we get on the way with the interview, some housekeeping rules from Sam.
Yes, today we are live on Facebook, YouTube and LinkedIn. So please send us your questions from wherever you're joining us from, and we will be asking them to Mr. Volkov during the course of this interview. Maria, back to you.
Thank you, Sam. So, Mr. Volkov, let's get down to business. What does this award mean to you and to Mr. Navalny?
This award means a lot because it's recognition and it's also responsibility, of course. What makes Sakharov Prize so special is that it is awarded by the decision of the European Parliament, so a legislative body representing and elected by all 450 million European citizens. So they kind of like entrusted the members of parliament, their representatives, and they gave this award to Alexei on their behalf. So it's a lot of responsibility, actually. But it's also very important because we are the pro-European movement. So our political movement clearly says that Russia has to become a European country, not only geographically, but politically, culturally, economically.
What kind of contact do you have with Mr. Navalny right now?
The only contact we have is that we are able to communicate to him through the lawyers. Lawyers are allowed to visit him, so we can relay some messages and get some feedback from him, which allows actually him to stay informed and even like participate in strategic planning. So he doesn't engage into like day-to-day management of our organization. It's a rather large organization, so it has some bureaucracy. So our work actually like requires some management and organization. But on strategic level, he discusses with us all new projects, new initiatives, everything that we are doing. So he's not only like a symbol of our movement, but he remains also very active as a leader of our movement.
Do you know how his mental and physical condition is?
His mental and physical conditions are fine. Well, his mental, very good. He is a strong man, and physically he even does like workout to recover.
Oh, wow.
There was a major crisis this spring when he had to go to hunger strike, risking his life. 23 days of hunger strike just to get medical treatment because there is no health care there in place in Russian prison. Since that, his health has stabilized, but as the health care is completely absent, if something will happen, there will be another crisis. But so far so good, and or as we put it, absence of bad news is our good news.
Do you think he's safer in a Russian prison than fighting for his ideas outside the country?
He's not safe. He is in custody of that very people that tried to kill him just slightly over a year ago. So, and what the only protection that exists for him is international attention. So while the world cares, while every world leader, meeting Vladimir Putin, demands for Alexei's immediate release, reminds Putin of Alexei's unlawful detention, he could feel like relatively protected. Well, the world knows he is in Putin's custody and Putin bears full responsibility. Last August, they didn't shoot him in his forehead. They tried to kill him covertly, so that actually their plan was that the plane lands and there is a dead body and doctors say it was a heart attack. So they don't want to be caught on the crime scene, and now, of course, in some sense, it protects him. But if, God forbid, he gets forgotten, if situation develops that like the focus of international attention goes away, then his life will be endangered. But having said that, we do think, and he does think, that what he did last January when he returned back to Russia after rehabilitation, it was the right thing. It was, he is a man of high morale, and it was a morale-driven thing. He belonged there, Russian citizen, Russian politician, who already sacrificed a lot, who did nothing wrong. Why should he be afraid to return to his home country? So we don't have to engage into victim blaming here. Putin is to be blamed for this unlawful arrest, for all these terrible things that Putin did to him.
Receiving the prize today, his daughter Daria Navalnaya said she was afraid that she would become the one in charge of giving speeches all around the world while her dad is imprisoned. Is Navalny still the leader of the movement from prison? Is he able to be?
As I already told, answering your first question, he is very much so. He is the leader of the movement, so there is no competition and no vacant seat. He's very much in charge of all of our political projects. He very much gives us, shares ideas with us. Actually, I mean, frankly speaking, if no one listens, this is one more motivation for us to get him out of prison as soon as possible. Because while he's there and he has some spare time, he sends us through the lawyers couple of ideas every week of new brilliant political projects. And our organization is large, but still not large enough to accommodate all of these projects and all of these new brilliant ideas. So we really need him to get out of there, to do the political business, to do meetings and interviews and so on, so that we can, so that we have time to work on his ideas and actually implement and develop his projects. But having said that, it's indeed very important. So we are not that type of a political organization that is interested in doing meetings, shaking hands, endless interviews, so on. Actually, even what we are doing here now is quite untypical for us. We normally don't do things like this because we are very project-oriented, very result-oriented. So we normally consider projects that could yield practical, concrete results. We are not much giving interviews and so on. We're using the Sakharov Week as a unique opportunity to reach out in a short period of time to all 450 million Europeans. I gave 43 interviews during these few days in Strasbourg to all 27 member countries. So that was important. But after the Sakharov Week, we will get back to normal. So to working, not to talking.
Okay. So then you mentioned that Mr. Navalny is giving you some ideas from prison, but also you are living in Lithuania. Is your movement able to operate then when you are abroad as well?
Yes, of course. Well, flexibility has always been a very important thing for us, a key for our survival. Under this pressure and this very toxic atmosphere of Putin's Russia, to survive, we had to be smart and very flexible. The circumstances were always changing, and we had to adapt. In 2013, Alexei Navalny was allowed to be on the ballot to run an election, and we were running an electoral campaign. But then he was barred from being on the ballot forever, from participating in an election. Okay, we tried to invent something else. We launched new different projects. We invented how we could participate in an election, being not allowed to be on the ballot with our smart voting project, where we kind of accumulated endorsement from our supporters to independent candidates, and so on, so on, so on. This new situation is yet another change of circumstances, which we try to overcome with yet another flexibility. We try not to regret opportunities we have lost, but we try mostly to concentrate on new opportunities that we could derive from this change of circumstances. For instance, to give you an idea, while we were operating from Moscow, every second or third month, some law enforcement agents would come to our office with a search warrant, and they would seize all smartphones, cameras, light equipment, computers, tablets, whatever, pretending this to be a material evidence for some other criminal case. And during the last 3 years, they have stolen, confiscated, but technically stolen, 2,000 pieces of equipment from our office, including flash drives and whatever. So just to make it impossible for us to operate, just to cause material damage. So we never could allow ourselves to have a large studio in Moscow. We always had to work with a very humble and the cheapest possible set of equipment because we knew it will be stolen soon. So now when we work from abroad, we actually could not fear that our equipment will be taken away tomorrow, which allows us to scale up our video production. And this year, we produced more videos, more content, more hours of broadcasting, more counter-propaganda videos, more investigations than in any of the previous years, and reached more audience. So, of course, we all love Moscow. But instead of like crying of being not able of operating from Moscow anymore, we try to explore we try to explore the positive sides of our new life, and there are some.
So let's check what's going on social media. Sam, do we have any questions or comments from our audience?
Yes, so we have one where someone is saying, what do you say to the critics that say it is an internal Russian matter and not for the EU to debate?
It is definitely not an internal Russian matter. Well, first of all, Russia is a neighbor, but actually every country is now a neighbor. Because of technology, the world has become very small. And some things that happens somewhere reflects everywhere in the world. Like, I mean, right now, yesterday, European Parliament sanctioned the Wagner Group, Russian Putin-linked private military company, like they're mercenaries who engaged in conflicts all over the world. Wagner Group is recently trying to start a civil war in Mali, and they're very active there, like trying to, they're participating in a civil war in Mali. Who cares? But apparently, a civil war in Mali would mean a next wave of migration crisis in Europe. Very clearly. It's a small world. Everything is connected. And export from corruption from Russia is also, of course, it reflects very much on European affairs. And current Russia is, well, it's not a good neighbor, unfortunately. Putin's Russia is threatening, is blackmailing, is amassing troops on the Ukraine border, trying to squeeze some concessions from Europe, and so on and so on. It's not reliable, it's not a good trade partner. Democratic Russia, after Putin, after a peaceful transition, will be a different country. The largest country in Europe, in terms of population and area, would be a very important market and a very important trade partner. Actually, the largest market in Europe. The Russia of the future will be a partner for many projects, from climate change, from dealing with climate change to like better logistics and transportation. Very many things that actually Russia could offer if it would be a good neighbor. And of course, we don't have to forget about the current effects of that export of corruption from Russia has on European countries and European economy. Like every time Russian oligarch or Russian deputy minister, Putin's friends, buys themselves a chateau in France or like hotel in Austria or like luxury yacht in Germany, they also think immediately of bribing local judge, municipal official, police, mayor, because they used to do it, they operate this way in their home countries, and also they feel more secure. They don't want questions to be asked about sources of these funds. This is dangerous. This is rotting the foundations of democracy, and this is rotting the foundations of European society as well.
Any other questions from our audience, Sam?
One question that we get asked very often is there a way for European citizens to support Navalny?
Yes, of course. Europe is a working democracy, which means politicians have to listen to their constituents. Unlike in Russia. Unfortunately, in Russia, even large public campaigns, even large protests yield nothing. So Kremlin isolated themselves from the public opinion, and they just don't give a damn about like what people in the street are thinking and so on. as far as they are in control of law enforcement, as far as they are in control of media, and as far as they in control of electoral system, they don't care. But in Europe, all means are available. You can, like European citizens, European voters, you can appeal and petition to your politicians. You can raise issues, not risking imprisonment or being poisoned. You can put pressure on your politician not to accept dirty money from Russia, not to deal with Putin, change their position on Putin, and this will help a lot. You can do some practical things. There is a very bad phenomenon which President Thomas Hendrik Ilves of Estonia called Schröderization, named after Gerhard Schröder. When Putin actually employs European politicians after the end of their career as board members of state-owned companies in Russia. Like Gerhard Schröder, the former Chancellor of Germany, became board member of Gazprom. He has to do nothing, and this is worth $600,000 a year. And not only Schröder. Former Austrian Foreign Minister Karin Kneißl, former French Prime Minister François Fillon, former Finnish Prime Minister, and many others were awarded with such seats. It is corruption. It creates enormous influence. It corrupts people. It makes every European high-ranked politician think twice. I don't know what will my life after politics be, but if now I will engage in some conflict with Putin, I destroy a very nice retirement plan option for myself. They have to think. So Putin affects their judgment. Putin wants them to think twice before taking a tougher position on him. And it's very efficient. It's very efficient. This way of behavior could be also influenced from inside. Petition your politicians, your representatives, so that your local parliaments pass legislation that would make it impossible for your high-ranked politicians to accept such positions where they would be effectively bribed for doing nothing and for serving Putin's puppets and so on. There are many possibilities. Just be open to them, and this will be of great help to civil society in Russia.
Has Mr. Navalny become a symbol of protest in Russia?
Yes, definitely so.
And last year, the European Union imposed on 6 senior Russian officials sanctions for their alleged involvement in the poisoning of Mr. Navalny. What else can the European Union do to help?
Well, that was definitely too little too late. So, well, we welcome very much this first step because it was the first ever implementation of new European Magnitsky sanctions regime. It was very important that this first application of Magnitsky sanctions were applied to those involved in poisoning of Alexei Navalny, not allegedly, in those who are responsible for the poisoning. It's a proven fact, proven beyond reasonable doubt. But Alexei Navalny himself explained in his op-ed that has been published by The Guardian, Frankfurter Allgemeine, and Le Monde on August 20th, on the anniversary of his assassination. Why this is not enough? Those security services guys who executed the assassination, the poisoning, they don't travel abroad. They don't have Schengen visas. They don't have assets in Europe, so they don't care about travel bans and sanctions. But they do it on behalf of the thieves, and they do it to enable thieves with further opportunities to steal more money. So we have to try to fight the reason, not the consequence. And that's why we are advocating for further application of these Magnitsky sanctions, not to those who executed the murder, the murder attempt, but against those who ordered it. And these are oligarchs of Putin's inner circle and of course, Vladimir Putin himself.
And will the award sour the relationship between the European Union and Russia? And if that's the case, how should the European Union move forward from now on?
We have not to forget always to distinguish between Putin and Russia. Relations between European Union and Russia are good and will be better. Russian people want to belong to Europe, want to have European community as their friends and neighbors and trade partners. Putin doesn't. Putin is an isolationist and he wants really like to build another iron curtain between Russia and Europe, which is a crime against history, because Russia, of course, belongs to Europe and always belonged to Europe. So the relations between European Union and Putin are indeed bad and will be made worse also by the Sakharov Award, and that's okay. Putin is an international terrorist, and I don't know why and what is the reason for European Union to maintain good relations with him.
The Sakharov Prize is Parliament's award for human rights. What is actually needed to improve the human rights situation in Russia?
Once again, targets the reason, not the consequences. It is indeed very important that this year the award for human rights has been awarded to someone who is actually like anti-corruption fighter. And we consider it as a very important recognition of that fact that we were able to make our point. Corruption leads to violation of human rights. Why there is no freedom of speech in Russia? Because kleptocracy, corrupt regime, can't afford freedom of speech because people will talk about corruption and press will investigate their corruption. Why there are no independent courts in Russia? Because corrupt officials can't afford to be challenged in courts. Why there is no right for freedom of assembly anymore in Russia? Because kleptocrats don't want actually people to protest against their theft. So it is because of the corruption, to make enormous corruption possible, why Putin destroyed, demolished all the basic human rights in Russia one by one in the recent 20 years.
Has the Kremlin reacted to Mr. Navalny's award?
Yes, President Putin's spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, replied that they don't care, which means they care a lot. Because when you hear Peskov saying something, you know that to understand his words properly, you always have to revert them by 180 degrees. Mr. Peskov himself was a target of one of the Anti-Corruption Foundation's investigations. He actually owner of some luxury properties in Paris, and he enjoys the Mediterranean, where he accepts bribes from his friends, the oligarchs, who provide him with vacations on their yachts.
How has social media helped your movement to campaign against the corruption of Putin's regime?
Well, as Putin's regime is based on a totalitarian propaganda and full control of traditional media, so we are not allowed to be on television since Alexei Navalny for the last time appeared on the state television as himself, not depicted as a enemy of the people, as a national traitor and so on, maybe in 2005 or in 2007, like 15 years ago. And since that, of course, he was never allowed to appear there himself, only a lot of propaganda production was there. So we don't have access to television, to radio, to newspapers, and so on, so on. So our only tool to communicate to our supporters and to reach out to new people and to enlarge the number of our supporters is through social media, through internet. And we did it since the very beginning of our movement, since 2011.
So speaking about social media, Sam, can you tell us what's going on in our accounts?
Yes, actually, speaking of supporters on social media, we have had many people saying that they support the movement and saying that they support freedom for political prisoners. So Ekaterina, Mercia, Attila, Andrei, and Mia on YouTube has said it's not only the task of Russians to put pressure on Putin's aggression, it is the task of the world to free Alexei Navalny and hundreds of political prisoners, which is echoes of what you have said already. And then we had an interesting question from YouTube, where someone has asked, what are the chances that Russia will join the European Union, and how much would need to change in order in Russia for that to happen?
Many people do not know that when Putin was running for re-election for the first time in 2004, after his first presidential term, he has put on his official presidential program that Russia has to become member of European Union, and also that Russia has to become member of NATO. It has been part of Putin's presidential agenda, part of his promise in 2003. So at that point of time, it was not considered as something not realistic. And indeed, it is not something not unrealistic. The post-Putin Russia, the Russia after democratic transition, might well become part of European family. I don't see any fundamental contradictions. I don't see many fundamental obstacles on this way. Of course, now the political culture of our countries is so different, and of course there will be like many technicalities, and this probably will take years, but it is feasible. And let me assure you, Russian people, especially young Russian people, of course, want this to happen.
And today, during when Ms. Navalnaya accepted the speech, accepted the prize today, she made a reference to the previous winners of the Sakharov Prize, the Belarusian opposition leaders, and we had some comments also on our social media channels, highlighting that it's important for many people who are prisoners, political prisoners, or freedom thinkers to be for their cases to become more popular, people to be aware of their cause. Have you spoken to the other people across Europe who are also in a similar situation to Mr. Navalny?
As I stated in the very beginning, we are, and it's very important for us, very concerned about doing and less concerned about talking. There are many other countries and many other fighters that experienced similar problems, similar yet different. And even the political regime in Belarus, which is a country very similar to Russia, is different, and there are some details in how Lukashenko deals with opposition and what is the political situation in Belarus that make it different from Russia. We have made a conclusion. We have talked. We can talk a lot, but this would be of no practical help for both us and people of the Belarus opposition. We follow their fight with a lot of compassion of support. We consider it as very important. We hope that Belarus will become also kind of a role model for Russia when they manage finally to defeat their bloody dictator, Alexander Lukashenko, who is of course also a war criminal and terrorist. But if there is an opportunity for a particular project, if we can sit and do something together which will be helpful for both people of Belarus and Russia, we will immediately engage and do something. But if we talk about like, let's have a conference and convention and exchange pleasantries and say how we support each other, we better spend this time on our daily work.
How does the work of Mr. Navalny's political network and anti-corruption foundation work now that the Moscow court has suspended them due to alleged extremist activities?
So we have to shut down our local offices. We had a network of 40 offices in all Russia's largest city. Every Russian city with a population over 500,000 people used to have a local Navalny office, which has been very essential for local activism. It was a place, a hub, where local activists could come with their projects, with their ideas, and we would support them. We would kind of like plant the seeds of local activists in all major cities of our country. After our organization has been declared an extremist organization, just like Al-Qaeda, we had to shut these offices down, because otherwise their employees will be very much endangered. Actually, otherwise every person, for just being a member of our organization, being an employee, could face up to 10 years of imprisonment. So we had to formally dissolve the organization immediately just to remove the imminent danger from our co-workers. And this is something that we, of course, very much regret. I spent personally like 4 years of hard work on building this network, on recruiting these people, on launching these offices. I went to every of the cities myself. And of course, it has been like a major blow. But as we already discussed, we tried to concentrate on new opportunities. Otherwise, we would just spend too much time crying and regretting what we have lost. And we have not lost everything, because those seeds that we have planted will definitely give some crops. So for 4 years, we educated local activists how to petition, how to rally, how to engage in local politics, how to run local electoral campaign. Now, with our offices gone, this knowledge and experience, it remains, of course, and it will yield important results.
Members of the parliament discussed yesterday during this plenary the large-scale Russian military build-up along the Ukrainian border. What's Mr. Navalny's position on this and the annexation of Crimea?
Well, first of all, these are two very different topics. I'm not Alexei Navalny's spokesperson, so I can't tell what's his position on the recent build-up, because it's a very recent news and there is like a delay, a significant delay actually in communication with him, so he didn't yet have a chance to share his position on this. I can only share mine. On Crimea, he condemned it many times, and we acknowledge that the annexation of Crimea was unlawful. It was a crime against Ukraine, a crime against international law, but most importantly for us, a crime against Russian citizens. Because when Putin annexed Crimea, he violated Russia's international obligations, the Budapest Memorandum of 1994. So he made Russia, for many years, if not generations, not a credible partner for international relations. After Russia violated such important international obligations, who would now consider Russia as credible partner for future agreements and negotiations? That's a crime. And also, of course, that it caused sanctions that cost a lot, that are now like an enormous burden on Russian economy. So Putin swore as a president to protect Russian people, and with his move to annex Crimea, he actually caused a lot of damage to Russian people. So he also violated the obligations he swore to. With regard to the recent military build-up, I still think this is an operation, this is a blackmail operation, in which Putin engages, like, to distract opinion from public opinion, both in Russia and in the West, from what's going on inside the country, from the crackdown against the opposition, mass torture in Russian prisons, extrajudicial killings in North Caucasus, shutting down memorial, and all other terrible things that are happening. Instead, he wants the world to discuss this military build-up. He wants to be important, once again, regarded as an important player in international affairs. He wants President Biden to call him, and it happened already, and today White House announced President Biden will call him again. So he wants to present himself also on the local and domestic news as someone very important. So I'm a major player on this international geopolitical battlefield. That's what he wants to achieve. And there is one very important thing that he already achieved, unfortunately, because the headlines now are, and the narrative of European politicians now is, like, if Putin invades Ukraine, then there will be a severe punishment. But sorry, he invaded Ukraine 8 years ago. It already happened. And when we allow ourselves to employ this language of that if he invades, it's a major achievement for Putin, because we kind of agree to forget the existing aggression and the civil war in southeast of Ukraine that has already cost 15,000 lives. And this is, of course, unacceptable.
Mr. Volkov, we are about to finish our interview, but before that, many final questions or comments from our audience?
Yes, we do have one very nice comment from Alma on Facebook, who was referring to the speech of Ms. Navalnaya when she accepted the Sakharov Prize on behalf of her father today, where she said that she was so bold and secure in her words, such a young, impressive woman. So I think it's a statement to the fact, as what you were saying, Mr. Volkov, that young people can have an impact, and it's really making a difference here in Europe as well.
And this is indeed so.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Volkov, I thank you very much for joining us today. Yeah, it was a pleasure. Of course, thank you, Sam, for taking the questions from our audience, and thank you, everyone, for watching us. Happy holidays, and see you soon.
Thank you so much, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays, too.